Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Grown Folks Business. I don't know why everybody's not muted, but it's okay, Diane. Just wanted to say welcome, and as always, appreciate the frequent flyers like Bob and Meryl. Diane, always appreciate you doing what you do behind the scenes, but I may have sent out some of the invites to actually be on air, so we'll make the most of what we have and have a good time doing it. Tonight's topic is centered on or inspired by and centered on this weekend's activity we have planned, umbrella event at Sugar Valley Airport. Looking forward to a wonderful time. Glad to be able to do it regardless of the circumstances. Open air outside. The weather's looking like it's shaping up to be absolutely gorgeous. Not too hot, not too cold. Honoring Portia Paris, critically important. She would definitely get a kick out of tonight's topic, and I could see her just thinking very deeply as we would engage in conversations like these. So she's always with me, and again, we'll honor her on Saturday also. But my apologies to those of you who only received the link to view from me. I always intend to send you everything, and we'll work behind the scenes to get that figured out so that you always get it, whether it's to your email or via text, however we end up addressing it. But tonight's show, the topic is making the world a better place. What tools will you use and what will we build? And I say we with capital letters, W-E. So if we're resigning ourselves to improving the circumstances of our existence, the world we live in, what would you bring to the table to make it a better place, a more inclusive place? I think that question should be on everyone's mind at some point as they meander through life. If it never crosses your mind, then there's probably some disservice you're doing yourself. This was confirmed not just as a topic for tonight. It was confirmed as something that I willfully engage in pondering from time to time, and I'm actually active in trying to exercise. So there are actual thoughts that I have that go into making the world a better place, and the tools that I feel like I bring to that effort. And it's metaphorical. So if anybody's listening and they want to type in something that's not necessarily an actual tool, but you can make the tool an actual thing and have it do something metaphorical, it can be something metaphorical and be talked about as if it was a tool. So we're having a creative, dynamic conversation that I'm hoping spurs some thoughts, and I'm hoping is a good precursor to what we have planned Saturday, when we'll be in the same space, and we'll do this again live and in person. We'll have a version of Grown Folks at Sugar Valley. So hopefully some of you can join us, and we'll maybe still unpacking this question, but I'll begin to somewhat set an example, but I have no doubt that Meryl and Bob absolutely have complete understanding of how I mean this question. Bob and I had a really good conversation with some folks downtown this morning, and that bled into us going to have breakfast, and we continue to really have a deep conversation about the human condition. Everybody who knows me in certain spaces, including this one, knows that I enjoy philosophy and being philosophical, and any conversation that's wholeheartedly considered of what it is to be a human being is a place that I like to be. So we had a conversation this morning that's going to probably be reflective of what we talk about in this space in some way, shape, or form. And it's just about kind of making a decision within yourself to participate in this thing with the full knowledge that, you know, it doesn't last forever, that you should kind of look and see where you can be of service. Doesn't mean you become Mother Teresa or, you know, Gandhi, but it just means that the time that you take to be intentional in doing well, regardless of what it may do for you, time is precious. So you might want to go in my case, play golf. You might want to go do some mindless activity, sit and watch Netflix all day. But if you've committed yourself to doing something that is outside of yourself that you know is beneficial to others, it should be a no-brainer. You know, it should be something that you understand is contributing to the betterment of our world, our small corner of the universe. And it's one of the reasons that when I was doing mentoring work more consistently, and I still get asked from time to time, understanding how critical it is to be consistent in the space of young people, to make sure that you set aside that all precious commodity of time to really pour and invest into them. You have to be honest with yourself about your ability to do so. So understanding that dynamic is one of the first steps to, if anybody who's listening decides they want to go volunteer and do anything, especially when it comes to young people. Your presence is valued. They may not react like you think they should at first. They may not be super happy to see you. But when you're consistent, it becomes a norm to them, and it becomes something they expect. And if you can revisit in your mind what it was like to be disappointed as a youngster, you can understand how major a disappointment it is for somebody to show up once, twice, sporadically, and not really build that connection. So I know I'm kind of rambling into that realm, but I think if you take time metaphorically and make it a tool, you can bring that to the improvement of the world, and an idea of understanding how precious it is, how much of a valuable commodity it is, and to be intentional, to be there when you spend it, not looking at your phone, not thinking about the other thing you have to do, not off in la la land while you're supposed to be present. So thinking about time and the totality of being in the moment, I think that's a good exercise. And I have other tools and metaphorical things I'll bring up in just a second. But Merrill, I'm going to come to you, and as I stated earlier, we'll make the most of the time we have, and just have a conversation, man. What's the tool that you feel like you bring, or what are the tools that you feel like you bring that will help us make this a better place?
It's really interesting you asked that question, Felton, because one of a gentleman that I met probably about 4 years ago, Felipe, who you may remember, who started this purchasing co-op. He graduated and he started a new venture because, if you know him, he's very passionate and energetic. And they had their annual meeting for the co-op today. I wasn't able to make it, but I did shoot a video today to talk about some of the lessons I learned in like 3 or 4 words to describe Felipe. And one of the things that I talked about today that I took from him as a tool is the art and value of journaling. So I think that's something that has been super helpful for me to like be a little bit more reflective and thoughtful about the things that I do and why I do it. And once I kind of learned that from him, or just kind of saw that was kind of how he, thought, it was like an extra step to make sure that he was being as thoughtful as possible about next moves that he wanted to make, because he has this grand idea about what economy should be. And he's a big proponent of cooperatives and one person, one vote, and um, shared prosperity. And so, like, I think journaling is a real big deal, because it allows you to be introspective about yourself and decisions you make. And it also, I think, has developed something in me to um, allow me to think a little bit more about the um, people will tell you kind of what their stance is on most cases. And we don't take the time, or at least I didn't always take the time to kind of understand what's the root cause. I kind of think about, like, you see a tree and you see the leaves, but you don't see the roots and kind of like what makes the tree healthy or poor. And so, like, now I've been really thinking about, okay, people give you the hot take, And a lot of times that hot take will either pull you in or push you away. And I'm trying to think a little bit more critically and be like, okay, maybe I need to spend a little bit more time and figure out why that person has that hot take. So that's definitely my tool. So I need to think about where my hot takes come from too. So that's definitely one of them.
Great, man. And I'm definitely going to ask Bob to recall something he said earlier when we were discussing Marcus Aurelius on the heels of what you just shared. I think it goes with that. But Felipe was a super cool guy. Spent a couple times with him that was, pretty. It was a good framing of understanding that there's always something else to do. And there's no one way to do it. And I definitely recall going to his house. He gave me a book, and I can't remember exactly what the book is, but I definitely looked through it, and it was about navigating career and, not just pigeonholing yourself. But I'll prompt you a little bit, Bob, in case it didn't resonate with you, what Meryl just said in terms of reflection. And we kind of talked about that a couple weeks ago, Meryl. I think you were off that show, but it was we talked about journaling and things of that nature. Kind of finding who you are with yourself and understanding, not crystallizing some thoughts. And this is Bob, should prompt you a little bit, but remaining understanding of what you perceive until something else changes that perception. And you have to be malleable. You have to understand that you can be wrong at some point. And that was something that I think you mentioned this morning when you were talking about Marcus Aurelius that kind of resonated with you. So you can kind of come in on the heels of that and then tell us the tools that you think are important and valuable and what you bring.
Yeah, I think that's really kind of a perfect entree into, this is not a metaphorical tool. I'll move into that in a second, but the tool that I think that as a white man growing up in the South, that is critical is my mind. And I say that because, and I'll share a little story. A few years ago, I met Elwood Robinson, who's the chancellor of Winston State University. He's a black man. And I met him, he was talking, and he said some things about what his mother said to him about things as he was growing up. Elwood and I are the same exact age, just for perspective. And my mother said the exact same things to me. And the phrase that was really common was, "That's just the way it is," when we would ask questions and whatnot. So Elwood and I talked, he looked at me and he said, "But that didn't make any sense to you, did it?" And I said, "No, exactly. It didn't make any sense to me." And he and I both had the same messaging at the same ages by our mothers, him from a black family, me from a white family, and it simply didn't make sense. So that was a foundational something for both him and me. And I say that because if we don't use our minds, we adopt what we're told. We adopt what the norms of society are. We adopt what the mores are of the culture, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. If we don't use our minds, but if we do, we can go, oops, let's hit the pause button. That doesn't make any sense. And we can challenge that, and we can use that to take us to a different place. And unless we do that, I think we're stuck, because the powers of the culture and of the decades and centuries of what we've built will be so overpowering as to completely stifle and it makes us dismissive. If we don't use our minds, if we don't really challenge, if we don't use our minds, which give us the basis to challenge, then we can't grasp anything, to be dismissive of the stuff that we need to dismiss and move away from. So I say that to begin with. And to the point that you made, Felton, about developing perspective and opinion, yes, we use our minds and we use the facts that we see and our analytical sense to develop an opinion, a perspective, principles, values, and we stand by those things until someone else has not opinion that's more popular, but opinion that's rooted in fact and evidence that's compelling enough to cause us to change and move.
Yeah, logic and continuity have a role in all of that brain power you're saying.
Yeah, and too many people just don't have that willingness. No. Too many people say, that's the way I grew up. That's what. I'm sorry, time out, grow up, learn, think, decide for yourself. You got to use your mind to do that. You got to trust your mind to do that. And by the way, your life is about you, and your life is about you playing the best role you can play in the context of the universe of people and humanity, to play the role that you can best play. And that requires using your mind, your talents, and so forth in a good and right and well-intentioned way. So the monkey's on our backs individually, and we can't shed that monkey, right?
So you're going into the next part of the question, and I want to come back to you because I know Meryl has to go, but that part, mine right now being time, Meryl's being journaling, self-reflecting, yours being the totality of the mind and perceiving and putting back out something.
Yeah, and so then, okay, what do you bring? What do you bring?
That's where we're going, and that's why I'm going back to Meryl's before he has to leave, because I know you're headed down the path. Meryl, what does that tool or any other that you may bring do for someone else? And that's where I'm thinking that was headed, Bob. How does that thing that you bringing to this us, what does that do for somebody else? Why is that beneficial to the us part, to the we?
Yeah, well, I think the journaling piece for me, I think, is going to be helpful. You raised something that's been troubling me. I've had this conversation with somebody else today about some of our youth, and maybe I'm harkening back to the conversation that we had last week about social media and kind of how it influences people. I'm super frustrated about how, and I don't want to group all of our Gen Z young people, brothers and sisters, into one category, but I do think there's a large percentage of Gen Z kids and whatever this COVID generation ends up being called that do things they know are wrong for likes. And if their friends think it's cool, they're going to do it anyway. And they know it's wrong, but there's some, and I can't relate, I just can't relate. And like, I want to kind of dig deeper and like and I come from a generation, and the way I was brought up, my dad, no nonsense. We didn't have any rights, and we didn't own any agency as young people. Like, he wasn't about like, access to your own individual agency. Like, I like to preach for young people, like, leaning into their humanity and stuff. And, you know, being able to think through and rationalize and be as adult as possible and like have some agency and decision making. But man, like they just do crazy stuff. There's this TikTok talent challenge that's out here in October. It's called Smack a Teacher. And we have incidents that are happening in our schools where these kids are like knocking, you know, teachers upside the head, smacking principals.
So if I could,
So I
yeah.
don't know. I mean, like what I'm hoping is like me being reflective and trying to get to this place to where everybody in the community has to have some value. So like I'm trying to like, that's my frame. Everybody in the community has to have some value. All these children have value, and young people who are doing these crazy things and are misguided. There are other factors that go into why some of those decisions are made and why they do the things that they do. And like, how can I use this ethos that I have to kind of like, you know, use my own self-reflection to be more patient and understanding of others, to kind of figure out some strategy to understand and be able to support young people that are just making these decisions that just don't make sense to me.
Well, your tool is a dual use tool. If you ask me, you're asking for some patience and understanding of others, but you're also kind of encouraging by bringing that tool to the us and we, that they self-reflect and hold themselves in some level of account that only they are tapped into.
Yeah.
The problem we have right now, and you know, the social media thing, and Meryl, kids, youth, when I was young, we did stupid stuff, and it was to be cool or to fit in. The thing that has accelerated certain behaviors are that now there's a level of celebrity or sensationalism attached to the act. Whereas before you were happy to get away with it for the most part, now there's a reward for actually publishing your ill behavior. And it's likes, it's laughs, it's potentially a windfall because you get a whole bunch of other followers. So we've kind of skewed, you know, going back to that social media conversation, we've skewed the grand possibilities of being able to connect across miles and miles and to be in each other's presence. We've made it a reward attached to ill behavior and not one that is for the betterment of us, which is what we're talking about. So, yeah, good take. I appreciate that take. But, yeah, I think your tool has multiple uses. And I'll say my other tool before you leave. Bob, you recall I mentioned this, I think when we were having breakfast, it was a shovel. And I'm using it for two different things. And it was to to bury symbolism and all of the things that are just feel good and not be good stuff. And it was to unearth truth and the things that we should value more. It was to dig up some stuff and it was to bury some others. So, you know, metaphorically speaking, that's a function of what social media had the opportunity to do, but it chose to, you know, go for the vainglorious stuff, and that's things that are not good for us, not healthy at all. And that's unfortunate. I know you got to rock, man.
Yeah, I gotta go. I'll see you guys on Saturday. Looking forward to it. If you can get out there, hope to see you, brother.
That's gonna be a good thing, man.
Yep.
Look forward to it,
All
Meryl.
right.
Take care.
Take care. Bye.
Yeah, Bob, I'm coming back to you for you to sum that up also, and I think you were headed there. I don't want to assume. I think you were headed in that direction.
And let me add that being exhibiting bad behavior and exhibiting all sorts of bad behavior in the context of our current crowd, you get elected president. And so what does that say? What do all the parents who made that election choice say to their children? You can't do it both ways. You can't you vote this way, and you can't then say to your kids, you can't lie, you can't be outrageous, you can't be all these things Well, why? You just voted for that guy to be president of the United States, to be the greatest role model in this country. So now you've got, okay, what kind of confusion does that create? And that's confusion that's created at every socioeconomic level in this country. I mean, what do you do with that? I'll back off that. Back to the mind thing. The other piece of mind is hearing. And you and I talked this morning, because ears listen, but the mind's what hears. You can listen and not hear. You can look and not see. You can read and not comprehend. It's not about listening, really. It's about hearing. It's about really grasping what your senses are telling you, which is partly what you hear and partly what you don't hear, makes up what all you hear, right? And so your mind is important for that. And for when we're trying to bridge and come together and create unity and create understanding and build empathy, we've got to be able to hear. And that means shutting out, and that means opening up. And you and I talked this morning about the gathering that I was with last night. It was a group of 8 white people sitting around a table, all leaning in, listening, and wanting to grasp what was being talked about. And that's really about hearing, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think, and not to totally unpack that conversation, but the subject matter is what draws the attention of those who desire or are open, as we discussed via the Marcus Aurelius reference, to being influenced to regard certain things a different way. That's highly important, and I couch that with communication as another tool. Yeah.
And so then, getting more to the metaphor of your actual question, I think that, and I'm glad I had some time to think about that, because I hadn't thought about that. I think thinking about it that way is valuable, because part of what we all, I think, face is, okay, what can I do? What can I do? And I think what we can do and what we have to do is do our piece that we can do, together with the piece that others can do, together with the piece that some others still can do, create something that can do a lot, right? And a couple of years ago, I was in a conversation that asked a question, and I realized that I had perhaps better access to things than a lot of people. I had freer voice than a lot of people. So a tool for me would be a pencil, connecting the dots, where I can see here and here they need to connect. I've got access, I've got relationship, I can connect the dots. I do connect the dots. That requires intentionality. Without intentionality, your point earlier, that won't happen. But with intentionality and with the understanding that that's something I can do that might not otherwise be able to be done. This is over here, this is over here. They need to be connected. I can make that connection. I can't do that, but I can make that connection. And if just making that connection is what I can do, then I should do it.
And there's something, a critical component to that is understanding that is in your toolbox, wheelhouse, however you want to label this thing, because for somebody else, they can't see those dots connecting. They don't know the value of those two people, places, things, or whatever coming together.
That's
Who knew
right.
that salt and pepper went so good together until you put them together on a plate? You know, that was somebody's just like, hey, I'll try these mixed up, and then we get all kinds of spices and flavors and tastes and things. But there has to be somebody with the foresight to really go there and make those things connect.
Well, and importantly to that comment, this person has the great idea or the great skill. This person over here has the great idea or the great skill. Combined, they have a massive idea and transformative capability. But unless the dots are connected, they're left in their own little places.
Yeah.
The guy that connects the dots doesn't get the ego satisfaction of that.
Yeah.
All he's doing is connecting the dots.
Yeah.
But if that's what he can do, then he needs to do that so that that can happen.
Yeah.
It can't be about finding
ego.
It can't be about ego. It can't be.
Yeah.
It has to be about. It has to be about something else. And
that's the full circle, Bob. So that full circle you just presented, in my opinion, about improving the world, you literally found out one of the things that disallows for it, and that's ego.
Yes.
The desire for the credit, the rush to make sure that regardless of how it turns out, you want it to be known that you were involved in the process. So yeah, you got to let that go. I think ego is definitely an issue and a problem, and we all have it. Mike Tyson speaks about it so well on his podcast, what I every now and then, but he's big on this ego thing. He talks about a time he took some kind of toad venom or something he did that he got to detach from himself and take on his ego. I think humility's another tool that is highly valued in a space where you're trying to improve circumstances. That includes patience. That those things have to be hand in hand, because not everybody is in a position of being impacted in a positive way. People have lives that predate an interaction with you or I or anybody else that may be in this realm of let's have a growth mindset. They have an experience that is not ours, and how far you have to come from that. And I'm definitely, don't misconstrue me as saying that I have figured it out and the life is good and come and join the party. That's not what I'm saying. I'm literally saying humbly that if you have wrestled with some things and thoughts about life, and you see what's more important and more critical versus the minuscule things that pile up that monkey on your back puts on his back and makes your situation that much tougher. If you recognize that you can take some of that stuff off, life doesn't become simpler or easier, but you become more tolerable, and you have a fortitude and an ability to deal with tougher situations. So when people who are not to that place yet show themselves, you have to have some patience, and they're still welcome. Still, I want you around. I still got love for you. I just understand that, we're not going to necessarily look at situations the same. Doesn't make my way the better way. Your way may be the better way, but I'm just saying things pile up. Another tool, compartmentalization, is something that I exercise. I put stuff here and there, not to leave it, but to understand that there's an order that I must approach to alleviate some of these boxes and silos that I put stuff in until I can get to it. Doesn't go anywhere, still there, but I know it's not directly in front of me or blocking my line of sight, so to speak.
I think another piece of that is respect and sometimes respect is shown more greatly through restraint, and I mean that from the standpoint that I could, if I'm the most powerful person in the world, but the least powerful person in the world only needs me to open a door and let them walk through, then that's all I should do. Because if that's all they need, then I need to do that so that they can walk through there, and then they do what they are to do.
Yeah, that whole be the change. I think it was Gandhi who said, "Be the change that you want to see in the world." It literally, to Meryl's point earlier, it begins with some self-reflection. It has to. There's no way that you can bring any tools that you have to that we world that we're discussing if you haven't, done some self-engagement. Now you can finish the job in that new space, that utopia, but you cannot come there and not have at minimum engaged with some self-reflection and some thoughts and ideas that you have to have debated inside of yourself and with yourself. We have to spend time alone. And I think that's another tool. You gotta spend some time by yourself and really get to know yourself and be honest with that knowledge of yourself. So before we wax too philosophical and turn this into some type of get well session for the audience, I'm gonna wind this down, and I'm gonna say lastly, and Bob, I'll give you the last word, but I'm gonna say lastly, something that I feel is super. It's the oil that keeps the tools useful. It's the whatever it is that repairs them. It's the protective sheath, and that's intentionality. I'm big on that word, and it's already come up. But if you do stuff willy-nilly without having intent to be effectual in whatever you're doing, then what are you really doing? So the intentionality has to be there also in that tool bag. I think that's important for everybody's tool bag, everybody's set of tools, no matter what they are: mind, shovel, and time in my case, and journaling and Meryl's. The intentionality to use them tools. You have to be intentional. You have to. I'll give you the last word, Bob, if you got anything you want to say before we get out of here.
No, my only comment is intentional is one of my probably two biggest words and two biggest, because if we're serious about what we say, we have to demonstrate that, and the way we demonstrate that is through intentionality. If we don't intentionally, we do what we do. We do what we do what we're trained to do. We do what we're habitual about. If we want to do different, we have to make it happen, and that's intentionality. We have to cross the road. If I really want to see what's across the road, I got to go over there and look at it. If I don't go over there and look at it, I'm really not interested, right?
You're not interested, or you're allowing somebody else to tell you what's over there, and
I'm saying what's popular. I'm not doing what needs to be done.
Yeah.
And so, absolutely, intentionality. I think that's the last. That's what this needs to end on.
Yeah, I totally agree, and we'll be intentional on wrapping up a couple minutes early and making sure that you guys know the ticker across the screen is telling you we're going to have a good time on Saturday. We're going to be safe. It's going to be outside. It's just I think a part of what this whole tonight's topic was about. It's about making our world, making our community a better place, intentionally. So you guys have a wonderful night. Always a pleasure, Bob. Meryl, I know you had to run, but thanks for joining us. Danya, always do your thing, man. I appreciate you. You are one of the most consistent people, and I mean that. I appreciate that, man. Have a wonderful night. and we'll catch you next week, or we'll catch you on Saturday. How about that? Saturday. Y'all have a good one. Take care.